Welcome, dear participants. This is Dirk Hangstein from Germany speaking once again. Welcome, dear all. The webinar, the second webinar of our e-learning course has now started. First of all, I would like to apologize our friend and colleague Mustafa Biyad, who is in the field today in Marrakesh and quite busy. I hope that I can replace him. So if there are organizational questions, just direct them to me. Unfortunately, I do not speak Arabic, but I hope you are content with my English. Please bear with me. If you don't understand something, just ask for this. Today's webinar is about sanitation situation in Germany, how Germany handles this situation. And we are all looking forward to receive a short presentation by our colleague Hans Hartung. Hans Hartung is one of the authors of the e-learning course, together with Sophia von Dobschitz from Borda. Hans is from Magav Publishers, and on behalf of Giazet Aman, he wrote the course for you. He brought the course to you. And he will answer also all content-related questions, which you should feel free to pose in the forum or in WhatsApp. He sees also your WhatsApp contributions to this. But because we have only this one presentation, this only presentation of Mr. Hans, just allow me to 3 minutes just to give you a short overview on this GoToWebinar. I think most of you are quite confident with this kind of communication, but for the others, first, the symbol on the left side of your name is a microphone with a stroke through it. So your microphone is muted from per default setting. This means that we do not hear any one of you. This seems to be a bit funny, but all of you have the right to speak, and all are speaking at the same time. It will sound like we are all in a cave or in a station or airport or something like this, where everybody is speaking and there's a lot of noise and so on. We have the symbol of the raised hand. You see this? This is the fourth symbol from the left side beside your name. And if you click on the hand, the hand is raised. Symbol beneath your name appears. Right now, this hand raised symbol is with Dua Al-Majali. This is the sign that you have to say something. And the moderator, in this case I, will demute your mic and give you the chance to speak. So this, in very brief, the meaning of these symbols. You also have 3 little things which are important in your what's it called in English? I just don't know in French. All the symbols, these sliders that you can see there. There are documents for sharing. Document we uploaded there is the presentation of Mr. Hans, which you can download as a PDF. And there is also a question pane where you can send the question, and hopefully you get an answer. Unless you get no answer, this question will be recorded and sent to the organizers after the webinar. If there are open questions which we cannot answer right now, we will answer them later on. It's no problem for you. And the other important thing is the chat window. And you can just send questions which are not recorded, just questions which are not so important. You can send them, and we will answer them as well there. Okay, enough for today from the organizational part of view. If there are technical questions, please direct them to the forum. We will have a look at the forum at least twice a day, and your questions will for sure be answered. Even if we don't know the answer, we will at least say that we don't know the answer. Okay, I will now pass the microphone to my colleague and friend, Mr. Hans Hartung, and we look very much forward to receive his presentation about decentralized sanitation in Germany. Okay, just one moment, Hans. I will just make a presenter.
Thank you, Dirk.
If you share your screen with us, we will see you present. Okay, very fine. Go ahead, Hans. Thank you.
Do you see but maybe we ask the participants if there's any organizational questions which should be answered in this webinar. Is there anything you would like to ask? And this might be important for all others, and we should ask here only for organizational purposes. So maybe if you raise your hand, then I see Syed has raised his hand. Dirk, can you demute him?
Okay, I just demuted him. Syed?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your that you organized this online session. I am Engineer Syed Saleh. First, I would like to thank you all for valuable lectures and lessons during this online training course. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this course. I would like to introduce myself. I am a chemical engineer. I am working at Ministry of Environment in Jordan on the position of environmental monitoring engineer. In environmental monitoring and assessment directorate, I would like to ask some question about
Yes.
what the deadline to finish each lessons and module 1 or module 2, and if you want a technical question or not now. Do you hear me?
Syed, I presume that you meant technical questions. Technical questions should be posted later. This is first session, discussion session is only for organizational purposes. So if there are no questions...
What is the deadline to finish each lesson?
Okay, the deadline, Syed, is just for orientation, is module 1 in week 1, module 2 in week 2, and so on. Yeah. But I now know that you, or all of you, or most of you are experts working in ministries, in universities, NGOs, and so on. And maybe sometimes you're in the field. So I think this is only for orientation. So if you don't have time to finish module 1 in week 1, you have more week in week 2. So
I
simple.
finished first module. And
okay,
listen.
but Syed, no sorrow for you. because there is no deadline for it. The only deadline we have is the online test, and you will learn in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your.
I mean, the information will stay there while the course is open. These 4 weeks, all the information will stay. It will not be sort of taken away, or all the 4 modules will stay the whole time. So you always can also come back and if you realize that you don't remember what was in module 1 lesson 3 or something like that, you always can come back, no problem.
Okay, there's another question of Bernward Hollemann. I just activate Mr. Hollemann. Bernward, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, all participants. I am new in your panel. My name is Bernd Hollemann. I'm from the agriculture side and irrigation engineer. I'm also a friend of Hans Hartung, and I would like to join you and to participate in this one. I have quite a lot of wastewater treatment experience abroad, and I would like to contribute to this. Thank you very much that I can join this webinar today.
Okay, thank you, Bernward. Very nice greeting address. Thank you very much for this. Okay, I don't presume we have any further questions. So Hans, please go ahead.
Okay, once again, greetings to everybody. And I will talk today about wastewater treatment in Germany in a general way, and more specifically on some decentralized solutions. But I'll do it quite briefly, and I invite your questions. So I'll just highlight, I mean, if we look, then you can see that I first want to talk about German water policy. I mean, I took some slides from the Ministry of Environment in Germany, and then about decentralized wastewater treatment, and then I have some examples which I want to present to you. Okay, let's start. If we talk about Germany, you know that Germany is in the middle of Europe, and that means it's connected to many river basins. So we are not alone. We have to see how we get along with our neighbors, and how we can share the water resources, especially the river basins, but also sometimes there's groundwater resources that are not confined to one country, but to at least 2 or even more countries. So we have to find some regulations and some agreements how we deal with that. Maybe if we look at that slide, we just to give an overview, Germany is quite densely populated. We have a little bit more than 80 million inhabitants. We have industry base, more than 130,000 enterprises. And in the picture, you can see that many companies are along the rivers, sometimes big rivers, and so, in many cases also water is for drinking purposes rivers. So you have to see that we get really very clean wastewater treatment of these industries. We have intensive farming, which people are very surprised, but Germany has big agricultural activities with shrinking number of farms, but at the same time, the farm size is getting bigger and bigger. We have many waterways for shipping, 7,300 kilometers of waterways. We have many international rivers. As I said, if you think the Rhine River, Donau River, Elbe River, we have hydropower, but more important is even the cooling water for the thermal power stations. With they use a lot of water and heat the water up when it's returned to the river, which can be a problem. And usually the water is injected with biocides before it goes into these cooling plants. So this can be one problem. I mean, as said, not only the industry, but also large settlements are along the riverbanks. And okay, we see here then leisure and functions are also important of the water bodies in. So you see, you have a lot of sometimes competing uses of the water bodies, and you have to try and arrange this. So if we continue, we see on that securing the quality of surface and groundwater is one of the most important aspects. And as you might know, Germany is a federal country, so the quality and of surface and groundwater resources is actually the matter of what we call Länder, or you would call them provinces. There's 16 provinces. Every province is is responsible for the quality of surface and groundwater within their territory. We have wastewater treatment facilities and sewage systems, and they usually have to comply with the best of available technologies. There's drinking water security, there's flood prevention and protection, which is has come up lately more and more, based also on climate change. We have floods which are, and you can see that if you have these big cities along the river, you can see that it is can be a real problem, and it was already a few times. I was just on the weekend, I was in Dresden in East Germany, and 2002 there was a huge flood, flooding a lot of the city, and it is restored by now, but it was a huge damage. If we look at the cooperation and coordination slide here on this whole slide, as I said before, Germany is part of many different river basins, and we have to coordinate that and cooperate with their neighbors. Information and public is quite important in Germany, and in many bigger water issues, the public is involved and asked, and there is many meetings with interested public of to explain and get their opinion about the issues. I mean, one issue, if we look at flood prevention, for example, is to get more and more retention areas, which apparently people don't like because maybe they have to to be removed, or part of their property is not is within the retention area. So you can see that it's that there is a long process of discussions and negotiations. The restoration of natural conditions in rivers is one of the big issues right now in Germany. You know that the European Union has the European Water Framework Directive, and there was up till 2015 the natural state of the rivers had to be restored. I mean, I think it was clear that it couldn't be in that short time from 2000. So we have another 10 years to to go on with this task. Okay, and the last picture you see is about international know-how and capacity development, which Germany feels quite strong. If we look at the next slide, we see that, and you will be surprised that almost 80% of Germany's groundwater and surface water is unused. So we only need less, around 20%, and only about 2.9% for public water supply. The biggest part is for thermal power stations. I already mentioned that they use huge amounts of water. And you can see that agriculture is certainly, in contrast with Jordan, is only a very small part, because so far we have rainfed agriculture on almost exclusively, but with climate change more and more pronounced, we find that we will have the irrigation will start to be of more importance, and it might increase a little bit, but you see it's way beyond uses. Now let's get more towards wastewater. I mean, there is laws and regulations that it's not allowed to discharge untreated wastewater into lakes and rivers. And these wastewater treatment plants must be based on the best available technology. There is specifications for each industry, and which they have to comply with. So you can see on the left-hand side some examples of industrial sectors that are regulated, and since they are all very specific, so they all need specific regulations of how they can deal with wastewater and the discharge standards which they have to comply with. Unfortunately, this is an older diagram, and you can see, for example, nitrogen emissions in total and how they decreased. If we go on the left side, and you can see that the nitrogen emissions, the red ones from wastewater treatment plants, reduced quite significantly. You can see that from industry, the emissions in nitrogen reduced very much. You can see from sealed urban surfaces reduced a bit. But you can also see from agriculture, it reduced, but not really on a big scale. And this, sorry, this is certainly due to the diffuse intrusion of agricultural nitrogen. I mean, this is fertilizers into the rivers, which is very difficult to handle. We have now, depending on the province, a law that you have at least to leave 5 meters alongside a river or streamlet unused for in agriculture, so that it's not plowed, for example, right to the riverbank, so that the fertilizer and insecticides and whatever is not washed directly into the river, but it has to go through the ground filter, soil filter. I mean, if we look at the other side, you can look at phosphorus, and you can also see how important the reduction in phosphorus by wastewater treatment plants is, has been reduced within this 25 years. So that industry did make big efforts to reduce its contribution into the water bodies with phosphorus. You can see that even from sealed urban surfaces, because even drainage water is treated in many parts of that country. But what you see also is that the did not reduce significantly, very little from in these last 25 years. And we actually hope with this regulations regarding the leaving the land not worked on along rivers, that this might help to reduce it further. Okay, and the blue one is the natural background, and we cannot do anything about this. I mean, this gives you sort of a small overview. When we look at the volume of wastewater treated in public sewage treatment plants, we see that we come closer and closer to total treatment in biological sewage treatment. This is the volume. I mean, we talk here about the volume, not about how many people are collected, but you can see that we have in 2004 we have 96.5% of the volume is treated in biological sewage treatment plants with further treatment. Further treatment means probably slow sand filters or denitrification or further treatment after the biological stage. So this means we are on the right way. Yeah, maybe we look at the next slide, and we see that the public sewage system is covers way more in the meantime than 500,000 kilometers, and you can see that this is a huge investment. And normally you say I mean, at least 1%, better 2% of the system should be replaced each year. I mean, if we say 2%, that means in 50 years, your whole system will be replaced. But it means a lot of efforts, and I guess it might be the same in Jordan. We have some very old sewage systems. They might be even more than 100 years, and they are below the big and very busy roads in the city. So to replace them costs a lot of money, and every mayor of a city is not very happy to do this because it costs lots of money, but nobody sees what is done. So the mayor, he or she, certainly would like to do some buildings which he can be or she can be remembered, but not try and replace wastewater treatment or wastewater sewage pipes. So this is a problem we have, and I mean, there is a backlog in replacement, and it will get worse and worse. And there is really not a good solution for it. But I mean, it depends also on the cities. Some cities are much smarter because if you do it today, you might prevent even further expenses in the future. But anyway, mayors don't like that very much to build underground construction with lots of money and not very visible results. So here it says the replacement is efficient. I mean, so far all these utilities concentrated on, let's say, many concentrated on drinking water losses. And the picture, the diagram you see is more on drinking water losses because with wastewater losses, it's not so easy to really measure them. So drinking water losses is much easier to measure, and Germany is quite good. I mean, they have tried to even get better. I mean, the other countries in Europe have done quite some efforts, and I mean, this is also some maybe 15 years old, the diagram, so it's better. And but Germany was always proud to say that it has very small, what you call NRW, non-revenue water, especially from physical losses, are very minimal. I mean, if we talk about these wastewater treatment plants, we always have to talk about energy consumption. We have also in the forum, we have quite an interesting discussions about energy consumptions of wastewater treatment plants. In Germany, we use usually the kilowatt hour per person equivalent and year. And in the forum, we used rather the factor of kilowatt hours per cubic meter treated wastewater. I mean, somebody's quoted that Germany would use about 0.4 kilowatt hour per cubic meter treated wastewater. And this is correct figure in a very general sense. I mean, you have towns where and cities where it's higher, towns where it's lower. It also depends on the topography and how much you have to pump. If we talk about kilowatt hours per person equivalent and year, we would come to figures of between 20 and 45 kilowatt hours per person equivalent and year. So this is quite a bit, and you can think that people and utilities especially are quite interested in trying to reduce this figure, and in this way reduce climate effects and yeah, reduce energy. And this here we see one area where you can do this. This is the wastewater treatment plant in Hamburg. It's the largest wastewater treatment plant in Germany. You see these digesters where the sludge is digested for producing biogas. They use the biogas to produce electricity in a gas turbine. But they use also this biogas to dry the sludge that is left over and incinerate it afterwards to produce steam for steam turbines. And these steam turbines produce electricity as well. Other part of the produced steam is heating the digesters, because you can imagine in winter it's quite cold, and these bacteria, depending on how you adjust the temperature, but at least between 38 or 45 degrees. So you use part of the heat for keeping the digesters at the right temperature, so that this process works well. And the steam they also use to heat in winter all the buildings, and that are connected to the wastewater plant and the container terminal, which is just beside. At the same time, Hamburg Water, that's Hamburg Wasser, is the name of the utility, has tried to look at their aeration system for the activated sludge process, and they were able to reduce the plant electricity demand by about 18% when using a much better designed aeration system. Their idea was, let's say, because they have achieved or they are achieving it in this year, the idea was to have self-sufficient wastewater plant. And I mean, with the digesting of the sludge, you will not get 100%. And therefore, they have now installed 3 huge windmills, and which will produce the rest of the energy. So they do not use any outside energy source anymore, starting mid-2018. I think the 3rd plant should be, or might be, or it's already in operation. But this, you can see that is a very special case, and we have a huge plant, but there is right afterwards. Just a minute, let me get for 1 minute. Ja. Hallo, ich bin bin jetzt am.
Okay, dear friends, just let me take the words for 2 minutes, because the next slide Hans wanted to show us is a little poll question. If you have a impression of how many people are connected to wastewater services in Germany as well. Okay, I can hear now that Hans is back to his office desk. Hans? Okay,
Yes.
this is. I was talking about this, Hans.
Yeah, and maybe you can switch it as a poll, Dirk.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Just say something about it, Hans.
So so now the question is, if you heard all this, how high is the percentage of people who are not connected to wastewater treatment in Germany? What do you think? Is it below 10%? Is it below 1%? Is it below 0.1%? Or is it below 0.01%? Maybe you are free now to give your opinion, and we'll see what you think. So can
And
we?
also, I think when we see the results of this poll, maybe we should give participants the opportunity to briefly make some contributions or questions or comments to the presentation of Hans so far. I don't know what you say to this.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Just leave it open now. We have 60% voted, and Lina is oh no, she's question time. Try to activate. So Lina, please go ahead.
Initially, I would like to thank you very much, you and Hans, for this webinar and for the presentation. In fact, I have a question about the slide where there is talk about the nitrogen reduction and phosphorus reduction. My question about the phosphorus reduction in wastewater treatment plant. Is it a result of reduction in the phosphorus in the resources? It means that reduce the phosphorus in detergent, or by applying specific techniques for removal of phosphorus? And if it is the case, what kind of techniques that is applied or are applied for the removal of phosphorus in Germany in the wastewater treatment plant? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lina. Phosphorus comes, I mean, it was mainly in, but there was actually a law in Germany that the industry reduce the phosphorus content in the detergents. It's used in agriculture. Depending on the situation, many plants now have an additional, after the biological treatment, they have phosphorus removal. I would have to check what they do. I can send you an email on that. But I know that quite a number of plants have now phosphorus removal stages after the biological treatment. Okay.
And we also have a question of Mr. Ayat Sahafni. Please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the interesting session so far. I have just two quick questions. First, as mentioned, there is only 20% of the groundwater resources are used. My question is that because the demand is required for 20%, other resource contributing 80%? This is the first question. My second question, little bit be answered by the question of Lina, but in general, is the emission reduced through the wastewater treatment plant in Germany because of a new technology that comes out from the research and development, or because these water treatments have been rehabilitated? And thank you.
Thank you, Ayat. Actually, regarding the groundwater, we just don't have to use more. There is so much water. Unfortunately, you see distributed equally water resources. So in Germany, it's so much water, we just don't need it. I mean, usually more than 3/4 of water in cities is in the whole of Germany is used is groundwater. The rest is usually surface water, but not directly, but it's usually by bank filtrate, so that you filter the water through the riverbank and already have a very good filtration stage in a natural one in this case. But there's just not much more water use needed. And about the wastewater treatment, I mean, it's a continuous process. What we also try to first, as I said at the example of water, for example, that you try to reduce the energy requirement of the plant, and at the same time you try to get it better and better, because the legislation is stepping up step by step, and you have to rehabilitate, you have to improve your plant and maybe build another stage, or after the biological treatment, and even two other stages to really get to the required level. So it's a continuous process, and there is a lot of benchmarking between all the different wastewater plants. Depending on the size, they are benchmarked. And you see not this is so good and this is better, but you see the average, and you see your and how you are regarding phosphorus elimination, nitrogen elimination, or whatever, in comparison to the group you are belonging to, your size. And yeah, maybe so.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Ayat.
Okay, and have another question, and maybe you could answer this quite briefly from Alam Al-Shurafat, and I will activate. So go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Hans, for the presentation. During your presentation, you mentioned that the wastewater is managed by local municipalities. And in compared to Jordan, in Jordan, I believe still the decentralization, the wastewater management is still to some extent centralized. So I want you to elaborate more on the cons and the pros of the system used to manage wastewater in Germany, and if you see that this will enhance the performance of wastewater management if was adapted in Jordan. Thank you so much.
Okay, Alham. I will talk in next few minutes more about decentralized wastewater and how it's linked. I think also Germany is quite densely populated. We still have many areas with few population, and it's just not feasible to centralize these the wastewater of these people. So we have a lot of, actually we have there's talk about 1.5 million smaller wastewater treatment facilities.
I mean more about even the centralized wastewater sector in Jordan is managed barely by the ministries in the capital. While you mentioned that the centralized wastewater treatment is managed by local municipalities or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's
Yeah.
your vision on this topic?
I mean, wastewater treatment is a communal task. So the city, or in this case, even the village is is responsible to to handle the wastewater. And you might know that Germany is extremely decentralized. So sometimes the smaller villages, they get together and make an association. So when they are geographically close to each other, they build one wastewater plant, for example, for 6, 7, 8 villages, and share the cost, the investment cost and the operational cost. If it does not make sense, and this is also economical question, then maybe each village does it on its own. I mean, this is always a question of economics. They have to comply with different standards, and if they can do it on their own, then that's okay. If they think it's more economical to cooperate with other in the vicinity, then it depends on them. But also the citizens will quite protest if treatment gets too high. So they have to really think very carefully what they can do.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
And we have one last question from Mr. or Mrs. Raska Albevani. I'm sure that I do not pronounce the name quite correct, but go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, it was correct. Actually, I have no question, but I wanted to share information about the question regarding the phosphorus reduction in wastewater. There was a law in Germany. I don't know when it was. I can look for the document and find it. I can share it to you. There was a law to reduce the phosphorus content in the water, and also the amount of water which is used in the dishwashing machine and the laundry as well. So it's in one point it's related to the reduction of phosphorus in water. The second one, there is also a large budget in Germany for phosphorus recovery from wastewater. For example, I have been at the wastewater treatment in Stuttgart, the small one at Bentele, close to the Stuttgart University. They have a lot of research about the phosphorus recovery, and two of my friends wrote the master thesis about the phosphorus recovery from wastewater. So it's case on both sides.
Yes, correct. Since it looks like phosphorus may become a very highly priced commodity in the future, because the deposits are just in a few years they will be exhausted. So the wastewater treatment plants, that's correct, are already recovering the phosphor from the wastewater and store, because they think in the future it might be highly priced. They can make some money so far. Thanks. Yeah, correct. Very good. So Dirk, you want us to show the how the participants answered the poll question?
Yes, I can show you the result. Meanwhile, we have over 90% votes, and around 40% estimated that we have only 1% people which are not connected to the wastewater treatment systems in Germany, followed by 10% not connected, 33%, and both 13% say 0.1 and 0.01%.
Okay, actually, maybe we can look at the next slide and resolve the question this way.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, so you see, I mean, this was in 2010, and you can see on the right-hand side the lowest rectangular, it says population without wastewater treatment is 0.09, so it's below 0.1%. So you can see that almost everybody has to have water treatment, wastewater treatment. Most people are connected to sewer systems, but there is also quite a number of people not connected to sewer systems, but they have wastewater treatment decentralized, or right in their house, or right in their in the building block, or in many blocks together. So there is not really sewer system, but it's but to make it short, 0.1, it's below 0.1%. This is still 700,000 people. They might have just septic tanks, but you can see that in many places which are very remote in the mountains, it's very difficult, and slowly we try to get to them and get some form of wastewater treatment. You see, a lot of emphasis has been done in Germany on wastewater treatment, and there's lots of experience now, and and in Germany we think that we have so much experience that we also can let participate other countries, and as the last person who talked to us, Raska, I hope I'm correct, said cities have in their water department, they have a big section looking at wastewater treatment. I mean, he mentioned Stuttgart, there's many other technical universities which are very good and highly specialized in wastewater treatment. Now let's go to decentralized wastewater management, and there's a definition. The idea is decentralized wastewater management may be defined as the collection, treatment, and disposal reuse of wastewater from individual homes, clusters of homes, isolated communities at or near the point of waste generation. I mean, this is the most important one, that it's isolated communities at or near the point of wastewater generation. So if you have the initial situation with small communities, B, C, D, E, you can either connect them together and send all the wastewater to community A, to bigger one. Last time I mentioned that, for example, in Switzerland and in the mountains in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they thought the centralized wastewater management is the only solution. So they built big pumping stations over the mountains, and now they now they see that even energy costs are so high, and pumping wastewater is almost always not as easy as you think. So in many cases, they they went to decentralized wastewater management. Either the total solution, as we can see here in the third sort of diagram, decentralized solution, or in the semi-central solution. For example, if it makes sense, as I said before, where two communities, two villages are close together and topographically no problem, no mountain in between, so they do it together, or others maybe do it separately. So this is in many parts of Germany, especially in the mountainous areas, it's the case. The advantages of wastewater in a decentralized fashion, we talked about also, we talk about in the course. It's you can adapt it more to the situation. It's more resilient that if you have a problem in a big plant, the whole area, you have to maybe send the wastewater directly to the river because it's not functioning anymore. If you have a smaller plant, it's only, and the others are functioning in a normal way. We talked, we have in the forum a discussion about nutrients recovery. I mean, some participants in the forum say you take nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water and then you introduce it onto the soil again. And yeah, if you look at decentralized wastewater management, the idea is you use it close to the generation point and you can integrate it with agriculture into local economies very well. There is a lot of financial advantages. Quite often, if we look, we see that about 60 to 80% of the investment costs are only in collection and transportation. So you could save a lot of investment if you try and save regarding these huge pipelines, sewer lines, and especially since you have to arrange them in a gradient, so it can be very deep, and the deeper, the costlier. I mean, I think you know all that. It might be a simple operation and less O&M costs. We already talked about integration into the community. It can be attractive for rural and peri-urban areas. It's less environmental disturbances for construction. If you construct these very long sewer lines, you have a lot of disturbances. I think even now in many countries, they always think also in with new developments on the outskirts of the cities that maybe they don't connect them, but they have their own wastewater treatment for this new development. Maybe just to come back again to Germany, the average price a citizen pays for wastewater per cubic meter is about 2.3 euros. So 2.3 euros is for wastewater treatment. I mean, it's not the water. Water might be the same, might be less, might be more. This depends on the community. So as we heard just now by the question of Elham that the community, that means the city or town, is responsible for wastewater treatment, so they have to fix the price and they are not allowed to make a profit on wastewater or water. So they have to give their calculation and show that they use the money they get from the citizens for the capital cost, the operation and maintenance of the operation. So the investment cost in 2010 in Germany on wastewater treatment was around 5.5 billion euros. So now let's come to simple wastewater treatment, and maybe the young woman who stands behind the consultant, you know all of you. It's Sophia, who works in Jordan at the moment. And I think Sophia is also with us. The gentleman, he said he has planned and supervised the construction of more than 1,000 of these treatment plants in the rural areas. And you can see here, I mean, unfortunately it's in German, but I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. From the houses, you get the wastewater into a septic tank. Usually there's 3 chambers in the septic tank, and from there you put it into a small tank that without electricity, you can so configure it that in intervals the wastewater will flow into the vertical constructed wetland. And there the constructed wetland, and depending on the quality you get, if you have very bad wastewater quality, you can switch maybe a horizontal filter after. And you can see this is in rural areas. You can see here with a delegation that you see the plants that keep the soil, that it's not compacted, so that the wastewater can filter through. And I mean, it's amazing if on the other side, I mean, here you find the pipes where the wastewater is brought onto the filter. And if you go into the back, I mean, it's really amazing what at least the turbidity to clear the water is. The turbidity is very low, and it's also controlled. Another possibility, or in combination, is biogas plants. You see here one in our small town where I live. They have about 300 cows. There's 2 farmers together, and they produce biogas and use it partly for heating the house and the plant, and at the same time producing electricity that is sold to the electricity grid. Just one last slide is waste dumps. Now people come and say, look, if we can rent the waste dump, and we will produce biogas out of it. And they drill holes into the waste, and for 20 years they get biogas and put it into generation for electricity generation. So at the end, I wanted to have another poll question for you. So the question is, how high is the percentage of people who are connected to wastewater treatment in Jordan? Do you know, or can you guess, or what do you think? We can talk about it, why it is like that, and what has to be done. So you are free to put your choice.
Okay, thank you, Hans. I just opened the poll question to the participants. And meanwhile, this question is answered. We have two questions. The first one is of Arva Aliyai Abdelhai. Just Arva, go ahead.
Yes, hello. This is Dr.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, from the German Jordanian University. Actually, I have just one question about the digestion of cow manure. You mentioned hence that you are digesting the cow manures in order to produce biogas in your town. And actually, I have a master's student working on something very similar to this. And I would like to ask you, maybe you can help us. Is it a dry fermentation or wet fermentation that you are using in your digesters? Because we are trying also to digest cow manures using mixed with wastewater, okay, and still we have problems because we have like a flux of solids inside the digester, and this is I mean it's a reason for problems inside the digester.
Yeah, okay.
We cannot handle the waste, the cow manure.
Yes, thanks, Awa. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's only cow dung they use here, but I mean, I can invite the student, if he or she, if they want to come here and talk to the people who use it. I mean, the farm, I know them, and there will be no problem. I mean, we are here south of Würzburg, so this might be an idea. I can offer that.
You mean to come to? I mean, they are working here in Jordan, in the German.
Okay. I thought they are in Cologne. Okay.
No, we have set up the experiment. The whole digester is here in Jordan,
okay.
And we are trying to manage the cow manure, to handle the cow manure in a digester, but we have to mix it with wastewater. Okay, so it's a wet fermentation. To produce biogas, and I wanted just to ask you how you are handling this cow manure. I thought that you are involved in this plant.
No, the plant runs by the farmers there, but I mean, okay, they won't speak English, but if there's a specific question, I can go and ask them. No problem. Maybe you write to me an email, and then we can handle it.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. I will send you an email. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Awa.
Thank you.
Dirk.
Okay, and we have another question of Eyad, but Eyad muted himself. Okay, he's active now. Go ahead, Eyad.
Okay, thank you for this interesting session. Again, I have just two inquiry quickly. It's not too deep technical. First inquiry is there any experience from the Germany water and wastewater sector regarding acquisition of land in order to enable the wastewater network going by gravity And if there is a high percentage of these cases, is there any plan for developing these lands? My second inquiry is the trend in Germany is toward privatization, involvement of the private sector in dredging water and wastewater service, or it's so far governed and managed by the government?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ayad. I mean, about the land, I mean, actually in Germany, 1 meter below the surface belongs actually in theory to the government. So the farmers get compensation when it's built, but afterwards they can use the land as before, because in Germany anyway you have to build all these pipes with water or wastewater below 1 meter because of the winters, and that the water does not freeze. So so I think this is normally regulated quite well, and I don't see that there's many problems. Farmers get a compensation for the year when it's built, or I mean, they try to build it in the winter or when there's no agricultural activities, but sometimes you cannot time it so well so that they get compensated for the losses on their land. And regarding privatization, that's quite a good question, because I mean, about 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of talk about privatization, and there was quite a big push, but especially the utilities, all the communal enterprises, they were fighting very much against it. So we have some private, I mean, more in the water sector, but still very few. I mean, there's Berlin was a famous case, but it was actually recommunalized. I mean, it was bought out by the Berlin city again, and it's not private anymore. I mean, in Stuttgart, it's the same thing, that it's being recommunalized, because we saw that private might not be the good solution people thought about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, and we have a question of Syed Saleh. Just a moment. Just have to wait. Go ahead, Syed.
Thank you, Mr. Hans, for your presentation. I want to ask, do you have in Germany separate standards for water quality for this decentralized wastewater treatment plants? And what the end use of reclaimed wastewater treated from decentralized wastewater? And what the maximum allowable limit for COD and BOD and TSS for in these standards, and who responsible for monitoring the water quality and operate? Municipalities, I think, as you see. Thank you very much.
Yes, Syed. There is different standards depending on the size of the plant. If the size is for 1 to 50 person, 50 to, I don't know. I would to look it up. No problem. Maybe I can put it into the forum. I mean, for operation is the town, city, whatever communal entity is responsible, and the monitoring is depending on what is partly the health department, partly the and there's self-monitoring. They have to send their values, and then from time to time they are tested if they don't they don't lie.
Yes.
Maybe
and what
so
the end
far,
use for water?
yeah, the water. I mean, usually the water is I mean, for the small ones, the water is used either goes into the small creek nearby, or because we don't need so much irrigation. Huh?
Yes.
Because we have rains enough, so
Yes.
it goes into the stream.
Discharge to water body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, you will get more details.
Okay.
Thanks.
And we have a question again of Rosgar.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jans, for your presentation. I was wondering why nobody talking about the sludge management in Jordan, and it's a big issue in Jordan. Would you planning to include the wastewater sludge in your slides for the next webinars, or you don't want to include it because as wastewater sludge coming mainly from centralized wastewater, not decentralized wastewater? Yeah, that was the question.
Thanks very much. Yeah, you know, the actually the sludge management will be part of the second course, which will be in the fall. So I didn't want to go into details now, but unfortunately, I can tell you that most of the sludge is actually incinerated, which we think is maybe not such a good idea. But the problem is that in our households, more and more chemicals are used, and people are just too afraid that the sludge might be contaminated with heavy metals or what else. So it's most of it is incinerated. But we'll discuss this further in the second course.
Okay, yeah, I know about Germany, it's incinerated, but maybe there is other option which is useful for Jordan, like to compost the sludge,
Yeah,
or to
sure.
yeah,
I mean,
then be option.
if you can make sure that there is no chemicals or no heavy metals is one big problem, then I mean it makes much more sense. And it used to be always in Germany that it was as manure for fields. I mean, there was I mean, as remember, up to the 2000s was always used for fields.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dirk, maybe you can demute Sophia. Maybe she wants to.
Yes. Okay, I just okay, Sophia, please go ahead.
Yes, hello. I just wanted to answer to the previous question about the reuse of treated wastewater in Germany. Actually, as Hans said, it's as we have enough water in Germany, it's not really practiced, but there's one city in Germany, it's called Braunschweig. Also, the GIZ organized a study 2 years ago to Braunschweig, where they actually, because of the climate conditions, they don't have enough water, and there they also reuse treated wastewater for agricultural purpose. So they use the treated wastewater to irrigate crops to feed them to the animals in the end. So that's the only city in Germany, or the only area that at least I know from, that uses also treated wastewater. Just maybe it could be interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. It was quite interesting for us. Hans.
Yes, I mean, there's Lina who has her hand up before.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, maybe, and then I just talk a little bit.
Lina,
about
please
the
demute your microphone, because otherwise we will not hear you. You're demuted yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we can hear now.
Thank you for giving me the chance for the second time. In fact, my question again about the reuse of reclaimed wastewater in Germany. As you mentioned, that there is not that much required, because you already have a lot of water and because you don't need that much of water for irrigation. But what as you are moving forward you accepting the idea of decentralization on the national level, what about separation of domestic wastewater into gray and black water, and in this way it could be there is other possible options for reuse, such as treatment of gray water for reuse for toilet flushing, or maybe other potential option. Is this idea acceptable on the social level, or and for the policymakers in Germany, or not, and what it is the potential for applying such thing? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Lina, very much, because actually I wanted to have a short, a few words on that, and I forgot. Sure, I mean, you see in some we actually separate what we call black water and gray water. Means toilets and kitchen, from kitchen sinks water, and put this into into a biogas digester or whatever, and use the gray water for toilet flushing, as you say. I mean, even in my house, I use river water. I mean, because I live, there's a small river flowing through the house, so I clean it and use it for toilet flushing, because I don't want to use this drinking water for toilet flushing. But this will come more and more, and will be more and more important. Thanks very much for your hint that we should also talk about this. Sure. And there's quite a number of hotels that find, because, for example, and all this water can be used and water for hand washing. This water can be collected and used for for toilet flushing, because you don't need that high water quality, or for garden watering in your house. Sure, this is a very good question. Thank you. And just we are at the end. I just want to look at the poll. I mean, many people were right. It's between in Jordan we are at 60 to 70%. Since most in towns or cities, it's much easier that we find all over the world that you first try to do what is simpler, and then if you come to the places where only if certainly it's relatively more costly, and so far the minds were much more pointing to centralized systems. Only now we come and see that there has been quite a big development on more on decentralized systems. So I think this is the way to go to get to higher percentages. And I think from this poll, it's very clear that we have to look at these decentralized systems and look what economically feasible solutions are possible. Maybe Dirk, Sophia she can talk much better because she knows Jordan much more, but she can say a last word to the participants and then we close. Dirk?
Yes, I don't know whether Sophia is still here. I just demuted her mic, but she is muted.
No, yeah.
Okay, Sophia. Sorry.
Yes, still here. I hope you can all still hear me. Yeah, thank you, Hans, for your presentation. Very interesting about the German context. And I'm pretty sure in the next lessons also we will talk more about also decentralized in Jordan, the enabling environment and the practical examples as well.
Perfect. Okay.
So thank you, Hans. Thank you, Sophia, for your nice presentation, Hans, for your questions and your comments, Sophia. Dear participants, thank you for your attendance, for your questions, for your interest in our today's webinars and the course itself. Just a few words, only one word to each slide. You have the possibility to download today's webinar of Mr. Hans from this webinar 2, wastewater treatment, as a PDF. And I also prepared the document describing the laboratory techniques developed in, not developed there, but compiled in USA. It's just an eight pages PDF measurement of BOD and COD. And you can download this as well, because some of the participants were asking about this. Okay, thank you very much, Hans. Thanks to all, and bye-bye, and see you next time.
Okay, bye-bye, and time, and see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.